Hey guys, how's it going? So I'm here for parts 4 and 5 of the Silmarillion read-along that I am doing with Elena Macredina. At least I think this is parts 4 and 5. I didn't check beforehand, I'm sorry. But anyway, so I I told Elena that I would be posting my video for part 4 late in the week, and then late in the week turned into never in the week, so I'm sorry. I'm a bit out of it because of the whole interviews happening. I'm still pretty tired, but anyway, I'm gonna try to keep this video pretty short for that reason. So these two parts, the big highlights of them, the highlights of part 4 is definitely the story of Baron and Luthien. So in this story, we have King Thingol of Doriath, and Doriath is just this forest kingdom, and King Thingol's wife, Melian, is a Maya, so she is sort of a lesser angel, and she has the power to put this veil around Doriath that keeps out villains, or basically just anyone that Thingol doesn't like. Thingol and Melian have a daughter, Luthien, who's the princess of Doriath, and she is supposed to be the most beautiful of the children of Iluvatar ever born, and so no one is supposed to get through the veil of Melian, the girdle of Melian, I think it's called. But Baron, this man, manages to make it through, and there's not much of an explanation for why he makes it through, other than that he was led by a greater fate than Melian could conceive. So he makes it through the girdle of Melian, and he kind of stumbles on Luthien in the forest. Luthien is just kind of out in the woods by herself, dancing and singing, and Baron sees her and basically is enamored and falls in love. And at first she's afraid of him and she runs away, but eventually they meet again in the forest and they start to talk and get to know each other, and she falls in love with him as well. And so they have these secret meetings in the forest for a while, but then they are discovered, and Thingol is not happy. He does not want his daughter marrying a lowly man, and so what he does is he tells Baron, okay, well, if you want my daughter, you'll have to go get a Silmaril from the crown of Morgoth. And of course that task is supposed to be impossible, because the Silmarils literally sit on the crown of Morgoth, and Morgoth has this huge fortress you would need to storm. But Baron decides to try to, and eventually Luthien starts to help him, and that's kind of where the story goes. So it's this great, it's a love story, but it's also a great adventure story, and it's a really, I think, a pretty fun, compelling, entertaining plot, I think. But it also has a lot of interesting characters, I think. I mean, I think you could have a discussion about just about any of the characters in this story. You know, you could certainly talk about Baron and Luthien individually. You could talk about Luthien's choice to be with Baron, because in order to marry Baron, she has to give up her immortality. What will happen, essentially, what happens when an elf and a human fall in love and pair up, the elf will outlive the human dies, and the elf dies of grief. So she knows that that's kind of her future, and she decides to be with Baron anyway. Then you could talk about Baron, and this way in which I think he kind of objectifies Luthien in the way he talks about her. You know, he refers to her a lot as this prize that he covets, and so I feel like you could talk about that too. You could talk about Thingol, who is incredibly arrogant, prideful. You know, just the very idea of giving this quest to Baron and Luthien is is kind of ludicrous, and could only come out of someone who really doesn't like the person he's talking to, and you could also talk about Thingol's relationship with Luthien, because you know, he clearly does love her, but it's a bit of a dysfunctional love. I mean, at one point he locks her up in a tower to keep her from leaving, and you have to wonder about the nature of the love of someone who's willing to lock up their loved one in a tower. You could talk about Huan, who is a hound, this giant hound, who is actually loyal to the Sons of Fëanor. There are two Sons of Fëanor who play a big part in this story, Celegorm and Curufin, and you can talk about them too, and how the oath of Fëanor and the Sons of Fëanor kind of starts to play out in this story, because when Celegorm and Curufin get wind of the fact that Beren and Luthien are going after a Silmaril, they say, Celegorm and Curufin say, well, you can't have the Silmaril because that's our birthright. We're the Sons of Fëanor, and Fëanor was the maker of the Silmaril, so we deserve them. And so they kind of try to mess with Beren and Luthien's quest, and you really start to see their true colors as assholes, essentially. But Huan is their hound who serves them, and he's a great character. He's very loyal, despite Celegorm and Curufin's clear villainy. Huan tries to remain loyal, but there comes a point where he decides that essentially Celegorm and Curufin have no longer deserve his loyalty because of the things they do. So yeah, and by the way, Sauron plays a big part in this story. He kind of gets his butt kicked, and it's kind of cool. So yeah, I think Beren and Luthien is a wonderful story. I know it was made in the long series of books that Christopher Tolkien has been putting together of Tolkien's writings. There was a novel version put together of Beren and Luthien, and eventually I would like to read that because it might be good. I did read the novelization of the next story of part 5 that we are talking about, the story of Turin Turambar, and I liked that. And so the story of Turin Turambar, basically Turin is this young human growing up in a royal house of humanity, and his father is taken prisoner. Well, he's thought dead, but really he's taken prisoner in the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, which is this huge, tragic battle where, like all of the elves and men came together to fight Morgoth. Morgoth was at his full strength, and, the elves and men were hoping that this would be like the final battle where they defeated Morgoth, but it totally turned on them. Several sort of companies of men switched sides and turned on the elves, so the elves and men were basically crushed. And this Nirnaeth Arnoediad means unnumbered tears. So this horrible battle where they're all defeated has taken place before the story of Turin Turambar occurs. And so Turin's father is gone. His mother sends him to live with Thingol as a foster child, because she feels like it's too dangerous for him to stay with them where they're living, because Morgoth will of course be after them. Basically it's just a series of events in which Turin does not get a break. Just horrible thing after horrible thing after horrible thing happens to him. And it's in some part brought about by bad luck, and also by the malice of Glaurung, who is the father of dragons, who's one of Morgoth's lieutenants, who actually is in my mind, the way I see it, he's a much more formidable lieutenant in the Silmarillion than Sauron is. It would have been cool if Glaurung could have survived and been the villain of the Lord of the Rings instead of Sauron, because it would have kind of been cool to have this big dragon as the villain. But anyway, that's just my own fan fiction. So Glaurung is this dragon who basically just wants to make Turin's life hell. And he succeeds. Turin's life is basically hell. And a lot of what happens to Turin is brought about by Turin's own impulsivity. He often does things without thinking. He actually kills one of his best friends by accident. And also accidentally kills an innocent man because he doesn't believe what he's told him. And he also accidentally marries his own sister and gets her pregnant. But, of course, he doesn't know that it's his sister when he marries her. So yeah, basically this story is just this guy who just can't get a break. And who also is not terribly likable, although it's hard to blame him for everything, because of course it has in many parts been brought about by by this evil dragon, and also by Morgoth indirectly, of course. But Turin Turambar it's probably my favorite story in the Silmarillion. It's very reminiscent of Greek tragedy. It has sort of a lot of the same points, the same sort of plot points that you find in a lot of Greek tragedies, I think. Like that, in Greek tragedy, there's supposed to be that moment of anagnorisis, where sort of a moment of realization, where sort of in Oedipus, when Oedipus and Jocasta finally realize, what's been going on, that he's her son, and that they've been, having children together. So that moment where they both realize that, and there's sort of that moment in Turin Turambar, and of course it also, in the great tradition of Greek tragedy, ends very poorly for the main characters. I have to say that people think George R.R. Martin is an expert at killing off characters, but just read the Silmarillion and you'll realize that Tolkien had him outdone decades ago. Anyway, these are two incredibly compelling stories. So yeah, I think next week, I think we have 2 more weeks of this. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Bye!